scary skeleton.
And we are well into October at this point. Planning to have this video come out a lot earlier than this. What can I say? When I started this channel, I didn't have a life. And now I've got a lot of life. At school, working with Velocity, just got a job, that's pretty cool. So anyway, the video every 7 days thing, I don't think it's gonna happen. I have to figure out a different schedule. But what I can guarantee to you guys is that I've got 5 videos coming out in the month of October. Got 5 planned out, gonna have 5 shot, gonna have 5 edited before Halloween hits us. So with that being said, welcome back to a brand new episode of Why Don't You Love? Horror movies. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're awful. They're everywhere, they come out pretty much every time of the year, and Halloween is especially where we appreciate them. But I mean, really, you see them all year long. They're cheap to make, they make a lot of money, but in spite of how many terrible horror movies you see come out, I love this genre because when it's done right, it is done so well. Take, for example, today's movie we're going to be talking about, It Follows. The mark of a good horror movie is not how many times you jumped while watching it. It's how often you think about it while you're at home, walking home, leaving the theater, in your room that night by yourself. When you think you see something move and your first thought is, shoot, that thing is going to get me. It Follows is one of those movies that really winds you up and then relieves none of the tension. The premise of this movie is that there's a creature out there. It's basically an STD, a sexually transmitted demon. It's gonna chase you, it's gonna follow you all over the place, it's not gonna run, it's gonna walk towards you. Out of context, it sounds weird, but in the movie, when you actually see this thing coming at you, it just makes sense. And it's moving just fast enough to where you can never really relax. And the only way to keep this thing from killing you is to pass along the disease by, doing the do. This isn't completely relevant to the plot itself, but I just think it's interesting how this movie is completely about sex, and yet it's a lot less sleazy than a lot of horror movies nowadays that have nothing to do with that. I'm not saying horror movies or any movies in general need to conform to a conservative standard, but it was pretty respectful in how it treated these characters. These weren't like 24-year-old Abercrombie and Finch models posing as high schoolers that were gonna go up into their uncle's cabin in the woods and just do it, and there was gonna be like butts and boobs all over the place. It was surprisingly restrained. Like, these characters act like characters. Again, very small detail, but like the main girl wears like normal underwear. It's not like Victoria's Secret type stuff. Like, again, very weird details to be talking about, but just something about like the way that the whole thing is about sex, but they're not intentionally sexing up the characters. Like, it's tough to explain. It just gives like a certain gravity to it. It feels more relatable to like the common people. Like, this story really could happen to anyone living in a suburban area. These aren't a bunch of dumb hot models who go out and do stupid stuff and rightfully, I mean, not like they deserve it, but like, it's not surprising when they get killed off. But here, everything is played super realistically for the scenario, except for that one girl who was running in high heels in the opening for some reason, and that weird like Kindle like seashell thing that girl has. Like, I don't know what that is. That's technology that I don't think exists. Other than that though, played super straight, played super timeless, and above all else, it scared the crap out of me. I'm of the theory that when it comes to horror movies, creepy should take precedence over being scary. I've got nothing against jump scares if they're done right. Take, for example, The Lady in Black. You have some jump scares in there that are done right, because the stuff jumping out at you is actually danger. It actually is relevant to the plot. But there's a point in the movie where I thought, like, wow, there haven't really been a lot of big, like, scares in this movie. But then I realized I'm leaning forward, everything in my body is clenched, because there's just this tension that keeps winding up, because there's just this dread of this thing is still coming after you. It's not gonna go away. They fight it in the movie, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but like, there really is no escape from this thing. You have to either fight it or run for your entire life. So you got great characters, a cool, unique monster, legitimate tension in a horror movie that just never lets up, and you got a cool soundtrack also. The guy who directed this was very clearly a John Carpenter fan. There's a lot of synth, a lot of 80s type horror movie music, and I'm not the biggest fan of retro stuff, I guess because I'm not really nostalgic for that. That's way before my time. But in the context of this movie alone, it works so well. Like, I'm surprised, like, when I hear synth in old 80s horror films, in certain ones that sound super cheesy, here it legitimately just adds to the tension. You know, in the Dark Knight, like how the Joker's theme song kind of had like that little violin bit to it, where it's just like, I think Hans Zimmer actually described it's supposed to sound like razor blades on a violin string. Like just tension, just building. There's a lot of that in this movie, and it really does add to it so much. And the beautiful thing about having your villain walk slowly and it doesn't look like anything, it changes form into different people. The beautiful thing about that whole aspect is that throughout the movie you see people walking around in the background. Any extra, any person, anything that's moving in the background, you take notice. Because they established from the beginning this thing will be in the background, occasionally walking towards the characters, not stumbling around like a Walking Dead zombie, just walking normally, walking casually, with purpose. And when it gets to the person, it will kill them. And then it will keep going on down the line again. And so that kind of plays on your nerves a bit, because you genuinely don't know, like, which person's just an extra and which person is the creature. And you can try to fight this thing, or you can just run, and you can keep running, and you can never stop. And this really is, like, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I cannot recommend it enough. Everything it sets out to do, it does perfectly. It even ends in a really kind of open, cool way, which horror movies don't often do. Usually they have to end on sequel bait, like, oh no, the thing's still there, ah! Like, weird cliffhanger type stuff. Here, it's open-ended, but it's not, like, so in your face. I don't think they should create a franchise out of this. Like, it's a nice one-off movie. I think this director should go on to get some more work, because, man, this is a cool movie, and I cannot recommend it enough. So yeah, October's underway, a lot of horror movie stuff coming up, and you can look forward to 4 more videos on horror movies and spooky, scary stuff. But until next time, God bless, and stay saucy. Movies aren't about having completely flawless logic, they're about telling a story that you connect with so much that you can overlook the flaws. I'm preaching to the choir, but there's a shocking number of people that don't get why this is just terrible. It's not a big jump scare fest, it doesn't have a big scary monster, unless you count the monster inside of us.